Welcome back to A Course in Miracles, Episode 10. In today's episode, we're going to do a deep dive into the principal teaching of forgiveness from the Course, but from a bit of a different angle than you've probably heard it taught before. Now, one of the reasons that I love the Course so much is because it's the only text and the only teacher that I've ever found that teaches the path to enlightenment through the concept of forgiveness. And the way that the Course approaches forgiveness is just endlessly brilliant and reflective of the level of consciousness that the book was channeled from. However, I believe that most people who read the Course struggle to grasp the full extent of how the Course teaches forgiveness and the profound implications that it has for our own liberation. Because forgiveness is really where the spiritual rubber meets the road and sort of helps to separate the wheat from the chaff, meaning separating those who are truly sincere about desiring freedom and those who are just kind of giving lip service to it. Because if any part of you is still swearing allegiance to the ego's thought system, then you will continue to see forgiveness as an enemy rather than a friend. So in this episode, I'm going to do my best to illuminate this topic in a new light for you. And the typical idea of forgiveness that most people have is basically the exact opposite from what forgiveness as the Course teaches it actually is. So I'll give you a few examples. I'm just gonna pretend that didn't actually happen, even though it definitely did. Yeah, you really did stab me in the back, and I've been suffering for many years over that. But I know the spiritual thing to do is to just overlook it, so I want you to know I forgive you. Yeah, all these years since you did what you did, to be honest with you, I've hated your guts to the ends of the earth and secretly wanted to murder your whole family. But I'm trying to become a better person now, so I forgive you. Okay, I did it. Am I enlightened now? So this is definitely not what forgiveness means, and precisely the opposite from how the Course explains it. Forgiveness from this perspective would be the ultimate act of disempowerment, because you are giving this person's mistake reality and then trying to overlook that reality. And this would be a form of insanity. So you can't forgive to become a better person because the person cannot forgive. The person literally is the belief that I am separate from you and you have attacked me. So it will always reinforce the act as being real. From the mind's point of view, to believe I am attacked actually gives my identity more reality. You can only forgive by knowing who you are beyond the person. You only forgive when you see that it's only the idea of who I think I am that was ever attacked, and all ideas are unreal. The Course demonstrates that what you are is eternal, infinite, and one with God, and it cannot be attacked or harmed in any way. So if you believe that someone has attacked or harmed you, you are equating yourself with an illusion. Only our made-up identities can be threatened because they are not real. They are nothing more than stories we keep on telling ourselves, or better put, stories that the ego keeps telling us. What you are is reality itself, and as the Course states in the opening line, nothing real can be threatened, and nothing unreal exists, and herein lies the peace of God. So let's talk about what identity is, where it comes from, and why it is so easily threatened. And if we can do that, I think we're going to see why forgiveness becomes the ultimate destruction to the ego's kingdom and the doorway to our salvation. Now, the ego is the belief in separation because it is a product of human evolution. As ancient humans evolved, began using verbal language and creating social hierarchies, the ability for self-awareness was slowly created in the human brain. Now, self-awareness is basically the ability to distinguish myself conceptually from other things in my environment. So the mind basically flips in on itself and becomes an object unto itself and can now begin contemplating its own existence, how it fits into its environment, and how it can begin to improve itself. This is the third density of consciousness as taught in the Law of One, and it's in the third density that the belief in separation is created. At some point in our evolution, when humans began transitioning out of the hunter-gatherer phase and began creating technology and weaponry and social classes, the ego's primary concern was not just for physical survival anymore, but actually for social survival. Because where you stand in that social hierarchy now dictates your entire quality of life. The farther up the ladder you go, you get access to better mates, better food, better shelter, you have to do less of the grunt work, and the benefits just keep on going. But the farther down the social totem pole you get pushed, the reverse happens. And if you get pushed down the ladder far enough, you might actually get exiled from the tribe, or perhaps even executed. So now the mind's primary concern becomes, how do other people see me? And where do I fit in the social hierarchy? So the ego as we experience it today, the way it behaves and the functions that it serves, was created primarily through the social hierarchy. As ancient humans began forming tribes and groups and eventually jobs and governments and so forth, there had to be a part of the human psychology that evolved to keep up with all of these new adaptations. Everything that exists in the physical universe is governed by evolution. So the part of the human brain that evolved to keep up with monitoring your standing in this social hierarchy is what we call the ego. So because of this, the ego only has two primary concerns: doing whatever it takes to elevate you up the social ladder, and doing whatever it takes to avoid you getting pushed down the social ladder. Pleasure and pain. All the ego is concerned with is how other people see me. And this is what creates the problem of suffering, because now our quality of being is not determined from within, but from without. Reality becomes a constant struggle for survival and self-improvement, where the ego becomes your cruel taskmaster, always cracking the whip to push you forward and punishing you severely for all of your mistakes. In chapter 13, the Course says, "Everything the ego tells you that you need will hurt you. For although the ego urges you again and again to get, it leaves you nothing. For what you get, it will demand of you. And even from the very hands that grasped it, it will be wrenched and hurled into the dust. For where the ego sees salvation, it sees separation. And so you lose whatever you have gotten in its name." The only two objectives the ego has are pleasure and pain. From the ego's perspective, pleasure increases my status and pain decreases it. So it clings to pleasure wherever it can, and it runs from pain everywhere it's found. This push and pull between desire and fear is the whole reason that we suffer. What the ego wants is the acceptance of others, praise from them, and power over them, and you placed firmly at the top of the pyramid. This is the ego's only goal and purpose, and it will never stop pushing you to achieve it. Its entire thought system is based upon this belief that you are separate from others and therefore needing to compete with them, overcome them, and rule them. This is where the power of forgiveness comes in to work its miracle. Through forgiveness, the entire thought system of the ego is reversed. Everything the ego wants you to get from the social hierarchy, you give to them instead. You accept others, you love them, and you want nothing from them. The law of heaven says that giving and receiving are the same thing. The love and acceptance that you give becomes the extension of your own self-love. And by wanting nothing from anyone, there's nothing that you lack. As the Course says, only what I do not give can ever be lacking. So this is how the ego keeps you trapped in a lack mentality, by keeping you on an endless quest to take from others. Forgiveness becomes the open door to salvation by bringing the awareness of oneness to your sight. Humanity is in the middle of this shift from the third density consciousness of separation into the fourth density consciousness of oneness. And the Course is the handbook for our ascension into the fourth density. For as the Course says itself, the kingdom of heaven is the awareness of perfect oneness and the knowledge that there is nothing else. So when we forgive others, we're not saying, yeah, you really did hurt me, but I'm just going to overlook that fact. When we forgive others, we are saying, now that I know who I really am, I see that nothing you did ever hurt me, or changed me, or stole anything from me. I'm the one who's been hurting myself by imagining myself to be your victim. So forgiveness actually does nothing at all, because it simply sees reality clearly. I am the Holy Son of God, eternally one with my Father, and eternally incapable of being threatened in any way. The Course says, the major difficulty that you find in genuine forgiveness on your part is that you still believe you must forgive the truth and not illusions. You conceive of pardon as a vain attempt to look past what is there, to overlook the truth in an unfounded attempt to deceive yourself by making an illusion true. It is sin's unreality that makes forgiveness real and natural and wholly sane. So when we forgive, we are not overlooking the truth, but the ego's illusions. Forgiveness does not ask you to overlook the fact that you are somebody's victim, because to overlook reality in any way would be insane. It asks you instead to see that you cannot ever be anyone's victim. As we talked about in last week's episode, it's only when you believe that you are a body that the ego can trick you into thinking that you are somebody's victim. Because from that reference point, whatever harm someone does to my body would be harm done to me. So forgiveness corrects this misperception of yourself and shows you that you are not a body, but the eternal light of God dwelling in it. This is what the Course means when it says that heaven is entered 2 by 2. It means that the only way I can get to heaven is through the person right in front of me. So you can quite literally forgive your way to heaven by refusing to see anything but the Christ in others. Because when I release you of every expectation I ever placed upon you, I have forgiven you. And therefore, nothing you do can make me suffer. But if I judge you for any reason, then I am keeping myself enslaved to the ego's thought system. So forgiveness essentially reverses the ego's view of the social hierarchy, from a system of taking to a system of giving. It stops making other people my stepping stones and obstacles to be overcome. It relieves them of the burdens that I placed on them. In God's thought system, other people are mirrors into my own self, so they become the way to my salvation. Forgiveness removes you from the cycle of desire and fear, because it asks nothing from others and it judges nothing that they do. So instead of other people being my obstacles to paradise, they become my ticket to it, my ticket to the paradise inside of me. So if you want the fastest route to inner peace, then practice wanting nothing from others, except for their highest good. Practice seeing yourself in their body, living their life, where all of their pain was your pain, and feel compassion towards them. Because underneath the layers of our traumas and conditioning, we all share the exact same being. And the Course urges us to look past the surface layer that the ego wants us to define others by, and to see the Christ within them instead. Giving is proof of having. So if you see the Christ in them, you must have first seen it in yourself. If you give love to others, then you must be the source of it. This realization becomes the entire undoing of the ego's thought system. So begin to practice wanting nothing from others but joy, peace, and love. And by giving those things to others in your heart, then you have them for yourself. And this is the power of forgiveness. In Lesson 224, the Course says, "Forgiveness recognizes that what you thought your brother did to you has not occurred. It does not pardon sins and make them real. It sees there was no sin. And in that view are all your sins forgiven." What is sin except a false idea about God's Son? Forgiveness merely sees its falsity and therefore lets it go. What then is free to take its place is now the will of God.